currently, with all the different forms of abuse that are perpetrated against women and girls, there's this subconscious feeling of limiting yourself, and it's hard for people to come forward and talk about it. But when you have others sharing their story, it also becomes easier for you to share their story. In India, we don't have a shortage of laws, but it's the awareness of the laws is very poor. So helping people understand that is one part of our work, and second is building their confidence in breaking their silence and reporting, seeking help. Help could be legal help or it could be counseling help.
Our speaker for today is Ms. Elsa Marie De Silva. She's the founder and CEO of Red Dot Foundation India and president of Red Dot Foundation Global, USA. Since Safe City started in December 2012, it has become the largest crowd map on the issue of sexual violence and public abuse in public spaces in India and abroad. Ms. Elsa has various fellowships and programs under her belt and is listed as one of BBC Hindi's top 100 women. She has won several awards, including Government of India Niti Aayog's Women Transforming India Award and the Digital Women Award in Social Impact by She the People. In 2017, she was awarded the Global Leadership Award by Vital Voices in the presence of Secretary Hillary Clinton. She has penned down various articles and has also been a panelist for World Bank, NDI, USIP, and She the People. Prior to Safe City, she was in the aviation industry for 20 years, where she oversaw the planning and implementation of 500 daily flights. So, welcome.
Okay. Welcome, Tasneem.
I am good. How are you? How has the pandemic treated you so far?
Well, it is what it is. It's affecting every single person on this earth. So for me, it is a time to reflect, but a time to rejuvenate. So I've had a very grueling schedule for the last 3 to 4 years where I've been traveling constantly. I've hardly been around in Mumbai for more than 2 to 3 weeks at a time. I'm constantly on a plane somewhere or the other. Whilst I don't mind the travel, it can be very hectic on your body. And so this period has allowed me to get into a routine, get back into an exercise routine, focus on myself and my body in the sense, stick to eating good food, home cooked food, and taking time to really think about what I want to do and how do I want to develop my organization. So very rarely do you get this opportunity, I feel, to take a pause. And so I don't focus on the negative aspects of it. Of course, many people around are very impacted in a negative manner by the consequences of the enforcement of the lockdown. And so I've done my bit to help out with the food distribution or connecting people to funders, etc. But as far as my team goes, we cannot move out. We have moved all our programming online, and we have invested a lot in mental health as well as building the capacity of our team. Thank you.
Sounds great. So what would be the three, since we are so comfortable with the lockdown, and I personally love the fact that I just have to open the Zoom call and like not spend so much time traveling, right? Because you spend so much time just traveling from one place to another, and now you don't have to do that. But then you do miss the physical contacts as well. So what are the three things you would do after the lockdown gets over?
So for me, I have worked for a corporate where I had to travel to work. And for the last 7 years, Red Dot Foundation has been working at home. So working from home is not a new thing for me. And I've realized much before the lockdown the benefits of working from home because you save so much of time on travel. So we were already conditioned to work from home. So I won't say that during COVID that has impacted me a lot. I've always known the benefits of it. But what I would focus on is valuing the relationships, the time spent with loved ones, the time spent with people. And whilst it's easy to get onto a Zoom call and chat over video, it's not the same as being in the same room with people you love or with, close friends. And that is something that I look forward to when the lockdown is over. Also simple pleasures like walking in nature. So having been cooped up for more than 3 months at home has its benefits. I'm fine with it because I know the importance of staying at home. But I would like to now and then enjoy a walk in a park or go to the beach or just sit in a green space and not have to worry about whether it's going to impact my health.
So I would like to know about your story as well, because it just connects you to the speaker on a very deeper level. So what in your life currently makes you feel the most fulfilled?
Undoubtedly, my work with Red Dot Foundation, where prevention of sexual violence is paramount. It's central to our work in achieving gender equality. And I do believe that if women and girls have a safe environment at home, school, college, public spaces, or even the workplace, we would be much better off in trying to explore what our potential is. For example, you would have the freedom to choose your career, have the freedom to travel wherever without having to fear for your safety. Currently, with all the different forms of abuse that are perpetrated against women and girls, there's this subconscious feeling of limiting yourself. It is socio-culturally conditioned right from birth, and we don't even know it half the time. And then you have violence that is normalized. So you subconsciously again limit yourself, you restrict your own movement, you self-censor often. But if we didn't have to worry about it, what is it that we could achieve? And then you look at during COVID-19, where gender roles within the work, within the home impacts your ability to concentrate on work. And you have the unfair burden of picking up more of the domestic care at home, which again limits you in many ways. It saps your energy, it saps your mental and emotional resilience, and you just don't have the time. So I read somewhere, or rather in one of my groups, international groups, somebody was saying, I don't know how male authors are writing and publishing books in 3 months, whilst women just don't have the time to even read a book. So where are they getting the time? The time that they are getting is because somebody else is picking up the work that they were meant to be sharing in. And that's really what I'm talking about. But it's so subtle and it's so entrenched in our norms that we live by. And it is bombarded again by the ads and films that we watch, the pop culture that we are exposed to, that we don't even know it often, that we are perpetrating violence or that this constitutes violence. So it's my job now to educate people and highlight the different ways that they can achieve gender equality in their own lives and within their own circle of influence.
True. Because like right now, even I saw a lot of, and people are making memes about it that, women are working. And I just saw this one meme where the mother is working with the child, and they are, and there was this one meme where they're like, now we'll have more kids. And I was like, okay, you find this funny. It's not funny, right?
It's not funny at all, because some people are working 3 jobs, work from home, work at home, and work for home, because children are also not going to school. So the education of children is now falling on most often the women in the family. So it's, there are so many ways that men can pick up their fair share and do stuff. And you don't have to always do, the cooking or the cleaning. You can divide it based on what is your interest, or you can take turns at it. So one day you cook, one day somebody else cooks, and share the load, right?
True, true. I'm lucky in that aspect because my father is a great cook. So he cooks quite often. So, yeah. Um, you are the founder of Red Dot Foundation Safe City. So, can you share a little bit about your work?
So Red Dot Foundation works on gender issues. We have a tech component called Safe City, which is a crowd map that encourages people to anonymously share their experiences of sexual violence. And this forms a database or a collection of stories which we analyze for hyperlocation trends and patterns. So, for example, uh, if you were to go to the crime data website, you wouldn't find what's happening in your location, in your suburb, on your street. But maybe on Safe City, you might find that kind of data. And would that data then help you as an individual to be better prepared for situations like this, so that you can find solutions? Or you can even start a dialogue in your community to say, hey, listen, this is not my story alone, but this is the number of stories that have been plotted on the map in our location. Are you comfortable with this happening? And maybe get your neighbors to do something about it. Or you could even make a representation to the police or your ward officer or your local MLA or corporator and ask for how the budgets are being spent, what is the police doing about it. So there are so many ways that the data and the stories on our map can really help you in improving the safety of your own neighborhood, because it gives you information, it gives you access to information. And these stories also help break the silence around the issue, because all of us know at least one person who may have been subjected to this kind of violence, if it is not ourselves. And it's hard for people to come forward and talk about it. But when you have others sharing their story, it also becomes easier for you to share your own story. And that is important, because if you don't document these stories or don't document incidents, then in effect, it never happened. There's no proof. In a way, it makes the issue more invisible. So that's what we do. We also do a lot of workshops in schools, colleges, communities, corporates, and to help different groups of people, age groups, stakeholders, to understand how sexual violence can be limiting to students, to women, to girls, to even young men for that matter. Because they could be experiencing it, but not able to voice their opinion too. And then as a larger society, how are we impacted by the negative consequences of this violence?
So during these workshops, any incident that happened during these workshops that helped stop public sexual harassment?
So our workshops help people understand what constitutes the sexual violence. So for example, we often think of it as rape and assault, which is one end of the spectrum. But it starts with nonverbal, verbal, from staring, leering, ogling, passing comments, making sexual invites, taking pictures and videos without permission and morphing them or putting them up and misusing them, stalking physically or in the virtual world, harassing, abusing. So all of this forms a spectrum of abuse, which we help people understand. And then we educate them on what are the laws in India. So in India, we don't have a shortage of laws, but the awareness of the laws is very poor. So we need people to understand that. And then how do you file an FIR? Because most laws for crimes against women fall under the category of cognizable offenses. And for which when you make a complaint, you have to file an FIR. But when you go to the police station, most often you're asked to file an NC, which is a non-cognizable offense. And if you don't know the law, you could be making a wrong entry. So helping people understand that is one part of our work. And second is building their confidence in, breaking their silence and reporting, seeking help. Help could be legal help or it could be counseling help, for mental health. And also in activating their neighbors or campus authorities to find solutions. So we have many ways, and a lot of the young people who've attended our workshops have said that it's easier for them to now stand up for themselves. Many of them end up volunteering with us and taking up small projects which they can do during their 3 or 6 months. And that also helps in building their active citizenship.
Okay. So even I have studied in a girls' college, and personally speaking, yes, there was a lot of eve teasing and Googling and bird watching. That's what they call it. Yes, I think. Yeah, I felt uneasy at times, but I mean, like the society is that way that you just like let it go. But then I think our college as well, they know that this was happening and they stopped it, but in the very beginning, and nothing happened. But yes, this is very common, and this happens a lot near girls' colleges. So I just wanted to say that since you are talking about the campus ambassador with Safe City, where very young people can volunteer, and a lot of our listeners are in that age spectrum as well. So could you tell us more about this and how one can be a part of this program?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a college campus ambassador program where you can choose to volunteer for 3 to 6 months and do a bunch of activities. So first of all, we will train you on understanding, gender and the socio-cultural norms that are harmful and promote sexual violence, then understanding sexual violence and what can be done to prevent it. And how do you engage your campus authorities as well as your fellow college mates in solving the problem. This is open to any gender. And you can write to us at volunteer@red.foundation.org or info@red.foundation.org. Now, we have done several programs across over 20 colleges in Mumbai and Maharashtra, and we have over 500 college campus ambassadors. And what we've learned through this process is that they get the confidence to engage with their fellow youth. So what you do is you find 4 friends to join with you. So you make a team of 5, and then you do all these activities. And you have total freedom to design your own activities. Some people use podcasts like this, or some people do a social media campaign. Some have a poster campaign, or some people make a film. So whatever idea you want to have, you could have a street play within your college or outside of your college, educating people. You could do wall murals. So through these various initiatives, you're trying to educate your own college students about how they can be better community enablers or active bystanders to prevent this violence. So first of all, understanding and creating awareness is the first part. The second part is taking action. And at the end of 6 months, you will realize that you have grown confident as an individual. Your own leadership has started to evolve because you are managing teams, you're managing a social issue, you're learning new skills on how to advocate for an issue. And then you are also meeting timelines, which is time management, which all of us struggle with. And the last bit is it gives you the skills to then take up another cause or another issue that you might be passionate about. So, for example, you could be very passionate about animal rights or LGBTQ issues or the environment. I know a lot of young people are very passionate about the environment. So, how do you advocate and how do you mobilize communities is something that we teach you in the process. So, do join us. We would love to work with you on making your college campuses safer. We've had such a great response that most of the colleges, or in fact, all the colleges that we worked with, want to continue with this program. They have constituted policies. They've invited students to be on their sexual harassment committees. They've also taken up LGBTQ friendly spaces, research on that on their own college campuses. So I think it's been a win-win for all. And through this process, we too learn a lot.
Wow, okay. This is so overwhelming. You not only include the women but also the LGBTQ and the animal rights. So I don't think a lot of people know that, because when you talk about safe city, it's mostly like the sexual harassment for girls and women, but then it's so much more, right?
So whatever skills you learn over here, you can apply it to any issue that you want. And also when you think of sexual violence, it should never be seen in a siloed environment. There are so many intersections. So LGBTQ, that's a gender issue, because it's about targeting people due to your sexual orientation. And also it's, challenging gender norms. So it's very much a gender issue. Second is environment always has an adverse effect, on vulnerable communities. And women and girls are a vulnerable community. They may not be a minority, but they are a vulnerable community.
True.
And then animal rights, we are all creatures on this planet, and COVID-19 has taught us that, all of us have to live in coexistence. So if that is what you're passionate about, you can certainly marry the two.
True. You made a 20-year career switch from a successful aviation career to the CEO of Safe City, and it's not an easy career switch if you go to see. So why did you make such a switch?
Well, after 20 years in one industry and after moving roles, I started off as a flight attendant, and then I moved up the ladder and I was vice president network planning, where I had a portfolio of optimizing over 500 daily flights. So after you've done a lot of these different roles, you kind of want to do a different, you want to do something different, and you want to follow your purpose. Because you live on this earth only once, so you want to make the most out of it. And whilst you think you know what you want to do in life, honestly you don't, because every now and then you reevaluate your goals and you want to challenge yourself. And I was at this crossroads in my life in 2012 when many things happened through the year. So one was I was looking for my purpose. I was very clear I wanted to work on women's rights, but didn't know which aspect to focus on because there's just so much of work to do. My company, Kingfisher Airlines, went through a financial downturn and eventually shut. We were still working on recovery of the airline, and I was getting job offers from other places. But I said, let me, it's like COVID-19. Give yourself a pause. You can always take up a corporate job. But I needed a pause. I wanted to say, okay, this is a moment that has been given to me to reflect and see what I can do. And then in December 2012, at the end of the year, we had Jyoti Singh, who was gang raped on a bus in Delhi. She's known as Nirbhaya, if you remember. And during that time, all of us were, shocked at the brutality of the crime. And there were protest marches, candlelight vigils, and I felt whilst I participated in them, it wasn't enough. I wanted to do something more. And so this happened at the same time that I just described all of it, that was happening in my own personal space. So with a couple of friends, I launched Save City, which is a crowd map, as I explained earlier, to crowdsource stories. But then the next 2 years was really understanding, can I make a difference? Will this work? Am I the one who has the skill sets to do it? Do I want to do it? Because initially, you start off with a lot of passion, but it has to be sustainable. So how do you manage your own motivation, but also your organization sustainability? And so 2 years down the line, I registered the organization. So in November 2014, we registered as Red Dot Foundation. And again in March 2017, we registered a US nonprofit, Red Dot Foundation Global. So now we are here to stay. We have two formal entities. We are a nonprofit. We've been working with several communities over India. We are present in over 6 cities, and we've worked with partners in 10 countries with 3 police forces. Wow. And we've used the data, which is the largest data set on this topic, over 12,500 stories, to engage 700,000 citizens. And this has come primarily through our workshops. Again, we have trained and created awareness amongst over 30,000 people through our workshops. But our campaigns in neighborhoods and on college campuses have reached over 700,000.
So, as you said that it was 2012 that Nirbhaya, Jyoti Singh's gang rape happened, and your foundation is turning 8 this year. So
no. So Save City would turn 8, but our organization will turn 6 in November.
Okay, wow. So,
because we registered 2 years later.
But then you were still doing that work in the 2 years.
Yes, so there's a difference. There's a difference because the first 2 years was a big experiment and we could not accept money. See, if you don't have a legal entity, it's very hard for you to, accept donations or make any money to run your organization. So it was completely volunteer-led. And I'm glad, because that was what we wanted to start, a movement of sorts, and we are still a movement rather, but you still need an organization it's like a vehicle that gives you the structure to do your work, so we will be 8 in December, but our organization is going to be 6 in November.
Yeah. So do you think that there has been any improvement in the sexual harassment cases, or the situation has stayed same because of the patriarchal dominance and the society that we live in?
So one, the laws have changed in the last 8 years. Lots of laws have been introduced which strengthen the justice system in a way. But there's still a lot of work to be done on sensitivity of the judiciary and the police, because having the legislation is one thing, but at least you have laws, and a lot of the laws are cognizable offenses and you could be jailed, and there's also, you could be fined. So that's there. The second is the conversations. 8 years ago, we weren't having these conversations. I don't remember having any of this conversation even amongst my girlfriends or within the workplace. So a lot of things have changed. A lot of companies now have prevention of sexual harassment at the workplace policies. They have awareness trainings, they have ICs, women are coming forward and making complaints. People may focus on false complaints, but that's just a tiny bit. It is the right of someone to make a complaint and be heard. So that is one. And then second is, you can challenge people. Earlier, it was hard to challenge people. Sure. So now, at least if you voice it out, whether formally or informally, people have to take notice and do something about it. But that was not the case 8 years ago. And also the education sessions. I don't remember going through anything in school or college or even at my workplace. So we do extensive, workshops in schools and colleges and help people break that silence, but also create that ecosystem. And then the last bit is seeing role models. Earlier, and even when I was in corporate, I was one of very few women leaders. We had a lot of women because aviation, you have a lot of women on the front line, but they are not necessarily in leadership positions. But now you have such a drive to have more women in leadership positions, and that's because of the ecosystem changing. And hopefully one day we will have more, like 50%, not like 30% or 20% or whatever. We still are underrepresented, but the number is increasing, and we can help that. And having women in leadership positions also has its benefits, because they think through their lived experience, and they institute policies and decisions that are at least friendly to their tribe.
Yeah, true. Now I know that you write a lot of articles and you pen down various stuff and your thoughts. And honestly, I'm a fan. Is there if there was one feminist resource that you wish everyone would read or view, what would it be?
I won't say there's one. I think you need to read a variety of them, because there's so many intersectionalities involved. So even within India, outside of India, you have different. So for example, you could be a woman, but you could be a Muslim woman, or you could be a woman and a Dalit woman, or you could be a trans woman, or you could be, a white woman, a black woman. So there's so many aspects to it, and it's not one experience. So I would totally recommend you reading a range of literature, feminist literature, and you can Google it, so you don't have to necessarily read only one kind. And then secondly is read any literature and look at it from a gender lens. So for example, at Red Dot during COVID-19, and I'd like to invite your viewers, every Wednesday we look at a film. We watch the film before, then we come to the session over Zoom and we discuss it from a gender lens. So it doesn't have to be a feminist feminist film to begin with, but you could be looking at a film and then discussing it from a gender lens, and then trying to understand, what are the gaps, but what are the positives that we can also learn from that film. And that is the way I think we should look at stuff. So first, educate yourself, and then be critical about things around you. Question.
True. I'll put in a request. I want Kabir Singh to air sometimes. When are you doing Kabir Singh? I'll watch that time.
Okay, I'll tell my team to do that.
No, because a lot of Indians love that movie, and I personally have a negative view about it. But yeah, so I want to know.
And so creating a space where you can have 2 or more views on a particular topic is so important, right? To be able to debate, dialogue, and have disagreements in a constructive manner is so critical.
Absolutely. And the fact that I can feel safe when I'm putting forth my view is, it's just empowering in itself. Right. So.
Absolutely.
So looking back, if you had to do all this over again, would you still do it?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. I've enjoyed every single moment in my life. Whatever I've done in my life, I think I've enjoyed it at that point in time. And I wouldn't want to change it ever.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us here today. It was such a pleasure having you, honestly, because I am a feminist as well. And knowing that somebody out there actually cares, that is.
Thank you. And you should come for our session. Try and come for some. They're a lot of fun. So I can send you the link. Actually, for July, you can check out. It's SDGs in action. Let me just confirm the link again. I don't want you to go to the wrong link. Oh no, why did it come?
We will put this link on our page as well. So whoever wants to access it can access it there.
Wait, I'll send you the right link because I don't think this is the right link.
Sure, you can watch.
Let me send that to you, okay?
Okay. So thank you once again for joining us.
And when will this episode be out?
So this will go through editing, and then it will be out. So I'll let you know when it's out. So after this session gets over, I'll send it to the editor, and he'll edit it out, and then he'll let me know when the session will be out.
Okay, one more question you forgot to ask me is what advice I would give myself 10 years younger.
Yes, I thought that like not everybody would be comfortable. So that is why I didn't ask.
No, you can ask me. I think it's a very relevant question. I always ask the question, what advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
Oh, from your article. Like
I always ask all the people. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, you have written that article, A Letter to My 16-year-old Self, right? I read that. It was very nice.
Okay, thanks.
So what would you be doing if you were 10 years younger from what you are right now?
So 10 years ago, I had no clue that I would go on to start Safe City and Red Dot Foundation. So it's a very hard question, to answer looking forward. But looking backwards, now that I know what I did, I would just tell myself to relax, not worry so much, and enjoy the ride.
Yes, enjoying the ride. That's what we all are doing in COVID. Just enjoying the ride. We don't know where we are, right?
Yeah. One thing I've learned is time. You won't get your time back. So use it wisely.
True. And a lot of people are facing that, like especially my generation right now. Like we have a lot of time. We don't know where to put it. And then we had our own plans, but thanks to the situation right now, everything is so messed up.
Yes, but time also, you have to decide what works for you. One thing that I would tell myself again would be exercise. So don't forget to exercise. So take care of your body and your mind and your soul. So at the end of the day, nobody else is going to do it for you. So you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of anybody else. So invest in yourself, invest in your body, invest in your mind, invest in your soul, and also enjoy the ride. Be present in the present moment.
I think after this podcast, everyone will be searching on Google, YouTube, 30 days workout challenge and all that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us here today. Thank you.